Thank you for tuning in to Andronetalks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Andronetalks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Andronetalks Radio. We have Eric Hecker here, and he is going to be sharing with us some of his experiences, and some of you may be familiar with him already. He does a show called Deciphering My Experience, and this should be an interesting conversation. So, hello, Eric, how you doing?
Hello, Jessica. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me today. I've been looking forward to this talk. We had a chat yesterday, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm anxiously here.
Yeah, we had a very good discussion, and it was interesting because you contacted me and you said, "Hey, you interested in talking to someone that's actually lived in Antarctica?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Mm-hmm. You know, currently you're living in the North Pole.
Well, close to it. I'm in Alaska,
yeah.
But
not exactly in the North Pole, but yes, or we'll say Alaska, correct?
There is a North Pole, Alaska.
Yes. Hmm. So, and we discussed a lot of things about how people were challenging you, whether or not that you actually live there, and we know that you have some footage. You've had footage on there. You've been showing this type of information for quite some time now. How long has it been that you've shared with the public?
It's been about a little over a year now that I've been starting to, share my experience with folks and try to help other people connect the dots with all the confusion going on in the world around us. I mean, it's hard for people to discern the truth in the environment that we're in when there are obviously so many factions involved in misinformation and disinformation. It's a reality that we're in. And I'm just trying to help people surf these waves of misinformation and get to the shores of truth somehow.
I find that a lot of listeners now have been observing so many different types of speakers, so many different people that are online, that some of them have become very, very savvy at figuring out who's saying what and kind of balancing things out. And I think it's good that they challenge people. They've challenged me, and they've challenged you. And it's not easy to be in this setting because there are people that have let the public down, or they don't represent who they say they do.
Correct.
And maybe they just started off sharing information, and then it became a slippery slope, and they became bigger than they thought. And yeah.
I believe all of these things are possible, which is why, again, we need discernment. We need to understand, yes, there's truth out there, and we certainly need to fight for the truth. But in addition to that, there's misinformationists and there's disinformationists. So we need to respect their existence and work towards, not getting caught in the traps. And the first thing we need to do in not getting caught in traps is admit that there are some. If we're going to all be in denial, then there's going to be people falling in traps. And that's kind of why I stepped up, because, I know my experiences are legitimate. I've actually been to Antarctica, and I can prove that. It's undeniable. A lot of other people aren't in that position. So I would suggest that people need to apply discernment to those other folks. Because I'm here speaking the truth that no one else is speaking. I've been to Antarctica, and I'm telling folks, yes, there is sinister things going on that I can prove. I've provided documentation on my website already. It's present in the world that the ice cube neutrino detector is up to no good. Those are facts. Does that mean that none of the other nefarious things are going on? No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is that there's a high potential that some of these other factions are manufacturing cover stories to cover for the fact of the matter that I have divulged.
Well, the key piece here is that, and we're not to just, there are people that have had some kind of secret space program or mission or something that they've done, which is fine, and we understand what that is. But when someone calls you a liar and you have visual proof that you've been somewhere, that's when, you know, I said, well, this is either trolling or there's something else going on. I mean, it's just silly. It becomes silly. So
that's actually, there's a title for that. That's called a dissipator. When it comes to organizations and these corruptions and stuff like that, and infiltrations of groups like COINTELPRO, they have what they call moles, provocateurs, and dissipators. So those people that are, you know, coming at me and literally are like, oh, you're a liar, prove that you've been to Antarctica. No, you're a dissipator. Go away.
Right. And you have footage. You already have footage on your channel.
If you can't figure out that I've actually been to Antarctica, you lack the ability to do research. It's not on me. I don't, you know, I'm expressing my experiences to people. It's not in a way to prove to people. It's to help them.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to prove.
Say, look at this.
People.
It's a unique area that not many people travel to. And then that brought in another conversation that we had yesterday is, why do people feel that they're not allowed to go there, or that you couldn't go there because the public's not allowed to go there?
And there, lo and behold, we get right back into misinformation and disinformation that I'm trying to break. I want to debase all these lies, because there's nothing banning anyone from going to Antarctica. You hear that, folks? You want to go to the Antarctica, go for it. Call a travel agent. Find out how much it costs. That's the only prohibition. It's cost prohibitive. Poor people are not allowed to go to Antarctica because they can't afford it. It's land for the rich. And if you think that's the only pay-to-play thing going on this planet, go to the website and we'll teach you other things.
Right.
You know, this is anybody can go to Antarctica. You can book a plane. You can fly to another country where you can book a trip with a boat captain. There's yachts. There's all kinds of planning that can be done. If you're rich, go right ahead. Go to Antarctica.
And the reason why you went there is because
for work. I was working.
The type of work that you do. Yeah.
You know, so it's rich people or their employees, basically. So I was hired by Raytheon Polar Services, which is a giant military industrial contractor. They basically make missiles and things to kill people or track people to then kill them. That's what Raytheon does. Right. It's also very interesting that the only people that get the operations and maintenance contracts for the United States Antarctic program down there are the largest of military industrial contractors. They can't hire a janitorial company. They have to hire people that make missiles and weapons to be in charge of the cooking and cleaning of the facility. That's a little peculiar, because last when I was there, it was Raytheon Polar Services. Now it's Lockheed Martin. I mean,
right.
and
all the many other
I assure you,
it'll be a
tennis match. It'll be a tennis match between more military-industrial complex companies in the future. Now, I also happen to know some people like, well, that's what they do. They're the best at it. They're the only ones that can handle that. Well, you know what? Turns out after I went from the South Pole, I went all the way up to Barrow, Alaska, and the North Slope of Alaska, working the oil fields and the gold mines. Also, remote man camps, remote logistics. Somehow we were able to hire other companies that work that way, companies like CH2M Hill or ASRC. These are other companies that can do that stuff. They don't make weapons. How come we can't hire those companies to go down to Antarctica and provide the exact same services that they do at the Northern Hemisphere, up in the Arctic? I mean, these guys know how to work in the Arctic. They can certainly figure out the Antarctic. I've been to both sides of the planet. I checked. I don't think we need large military industrial complex contracting companies in charge of these facilities.
Yep.
You know, so there's certainly something going on. And
tell us.
Well, I produce documentation first and foremost about the ice cube neutrino detector. So that is a massive array that it's in the ice. It's manufactured on
approximately how large is it? Could you do an estimate?
Miles. It is So starting on the surface of the ice, they drill down close to the bottom. The South Pole Station sits atop 2 miles of ice before you get to Earth. And they drilled it down using hot water steam drills and stuff like that to go down 2 miles. And they made it, I think it was like, I forget, it was like a 30 or 32 inch diameter hole or something. You could just barely fit down it. It would be terrible. But the idea is that it's 2 miles deep, and then they have a cable. And then on that cable, they have a whole bunch of what they call DOMs. I think they're digital optical modules. And these DOMs, we were taught at the time, were receivers of light. That when a neutrino is coming from anywhere in the cosmos, and it gets to the South Pole ice patch there where the detector is, when that neutrino contacts the nucleus of the water molecule, a blue light flashes.
Yeah.
And a muon is released. And it's that light flash that the DOM was designed to detect. And in my experience in military industrial complex programs, whenever they can pay for something to do one thing, they certainly get their money's worth out of it. But I don't think I've ever seen anything where they only get their one money's worth out of. It's like everything does something else. Mm-hmm. So I've found documents that show that the DOMs also transmit. That each DOM, there's a total of 5,160 DOMs. So they have a whole bunch of these holes covering an area that happens to be a giant hexagon, which I think is a sacred geometry shape that's very important.
Sure. Absolutely. It's in nature too.
Yep. It's basically a giant hexagon array that's 2 miles tall by a few miles around. Massive. And then, it's 3D because the DOMs are down in a string, and then you have all these strings. So 5,160 DOMs, in addition to being able to receive light flashes, also can transmit up to 2,140 volts each, I believe, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, but you can check the document. But now that adds up to a lot of transmission.
Voltage, yeah.
Yep. So that adds up to being something. And I'm looking into what that could be. And in addition to that, this is my testimony. Okay. I don't have proof because at the time I didn't think that I need to have to prove it.
So is it salt? Does it feel salt? What does it feel like? What does it look like? I mean,
the detector?
Yeah.
It's a massive building. It's a massive building. It's a massive building that just basically has tons and tons of computer racks. It has a massive server room. It's the biggest server room I've ever been in. No, it's not. I'm sorry. I can think of a bigger one. I'm sorry. It was a huge server room. And from what my understanding is, what I was told by other people in the know, they said there's no way that all of those towers are for that. For what we're saying we're doing and detecting. They're like, yeah, there's totally something else going on. It's off the wall. They said it's probably 1,000 times more servers than we need. It's huge. Rows and rows of it in the building. More or less, I had to go to the ice cube neutrino detector every day as part of my rounds for maintenance to make sure that the louvers, there's an automated louver that opens, and there's a hood that goes down to the outside, and it has a chicken wire screen on it to keep, like, the snow from blowing up. It slows it down.
Yeah.
But that chicken wire screen will accrue more and more until it's sealed up. So I have to go out and just knock the chicken wire screen to get the snow off. So air can still
probably have to do that often, right?
Every day.
Yeah.
Because the louvers would open, and if that thing sealed up the screen, they couldn't exchange air because the amount of servers they have running in there, it would overheat and fry everything. So we were processing so much information in that space that we were actually overheating a room in the South Pole. We weren't heating that building. We were cooling it using outside air.
Wow. And maybe that's strategically why it's placed there.
It has something to do with it. It all adds up. Remote location for tons of info. It's guarded. Something's going on there. I mean, we can just keep piling up on the list for what's weird at South Pole. That stuff I had documented. The item that I wanted to bring up that I haven't documented, it's just my firsthand experience, but it matters. There's what they call ELF, extra low frequency antennas.
Mm-hmm.
Those are different from the ice cube neutrino detector in as so far it's, I guess you would say, it's more similar to like a standard wire, where a standard antenna, where you can think of like there just being like a big huge wire, but apparently that this big huge wire array for the ELF is also miles. Like the station is sitting on top of this massive antenna array, excuse me, of ELF, and we were told, oh, this is so funny from our conversation yesterday. I believe it was said that sometime around 1994 they turned the ELF off. And that they said that the ELF is no longer in use. It's dormant. Like it's there but not on, is what we were told. And I'm operations and maintenance there, and I assure you, I learned how to flip every switch. I went into every door, and I learned that facility. I learned they were lying. The ELF is absolutely on and energized. It's completely up and running.
Right. But
That
they
also-
do that when they don't want you looking at something.
Absolutely. There's just lots of stuff that's like, you know, it's a huge facility. There were certain things that were on and off seasonally. You know, so you're doing things and you're doing work, and, you know, safety first, and we have to work on this circuit and that. Oh, so next thing you know, you start tracking things like, and now I'm in a circuit breaker box, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, that one's supposed to be off, and it's not. Like, so you start getting confused because it's like, well, wait a minute, you have to check stuff, right? So the next thing I know, I'm finding stuff that's energized that I was told was off, and then I'm being told just it's on. It doesn't even matter. Like, don't worry about it. So I didn't worry about it. You know, I was told there was science going on. It's science.
So there isn't another guy that was there doing maintenance. So maybe they had this other guy.
We had plenty of other folks there.
So someone was assigned to work in that area where, you know, everyone thought it was shut down except for them, maybe.
I wouldn't say that was an assigned area to work. It was more of a service zone for, you know, switches and relays and stuff like that.
Okay.
But it was just in the process of tracking it down in this service area that I found it was on, and then I brought it to the attention of the facility. And I guess because I don't want to out folks individually, I'll just say that I ran it up the chain of command, and I confirmed that it was to stay on. Okay. You know.
And did they ask you to maintain it after that point, or just stay away from there?
They didn't ask me anything because they don't have to at that point. This is what people don't understand. Like, this is compartmentalization of information 101. Mm-hmm. This is how it works. This is need to know stuff. I was given what I was needed to know. That was it. It's the end of the conversation. It's not
you don't probe. You don't probe. You don't ask anything else.
I asked the question.
It's just a yes or no kind of thing.
I was given an answer.
Affirmative.
Yeah, right. It's staying on, and it's on for science. I mean, in the environment that we're in, stuff like that happens all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's the last resort answer for everything. And that actually is the end all say all there. It's for science. Science is that's why we're here. You can't argue with science. I mean, I don't like it, you know, but it's just like, that's the environment. They say it's for science.
And that ends the conversation right there. That's the end of the conversation.
I don't get to tell them to turn it off.
No, of course not.
Yeah. I mean, I work for them. If anything, they would say it's broken and fix it, you know. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a very amicable environment. So I get what you're saying. Like, if you have a problem with something, you should do something and say something. We were doing that all the time. There was all kinds of issues going on. It's 49 people for 8 months in the middle of nowhere.
Plus, what's the temperature? The average temperature?
For the people that stay in the station all day long, it's about 60 to 64 degrees. But people that have to go outside, it was the winter season. They say it's an average of minus 75. Well, actually, I think they say that for the year. It averages to minus 75. But for the most part of the winter, it was colder than minus 80 for the majority of the winter.
It's Fahrenheit for anyone that's listening. It's
yes.
Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Minus 80 Fahrenheit. Oftentimes, we would be in the minus 90 range. And on a fistful of occasions, we went below minus 100, which is it's all extremely interesting to observe, because the concept is really hard for people to understand. I laugh now when I watch the news and they talk about wind chill, and people are like, oh, it's, you know, 0 degrees out, but it feels like minus 30 with wind chill. Have you ever been in minus 30? I love when they say things like, well, it's minus 40, but it feels like minus 100 with wind chill. Really? Have you ever been in minus 100? I don't know how these weather folks get these ideas, because it's not at all what they purport.
Not comparable.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I've told people that, you know.
How many hats, coats, and all that other stuff that you would wear to accommodate that?
The coldest, worst days ever, I had on so much gear. It's probably 30 to 40 pounds of gear, depending on what was going on. Because in addition to going out with my clothing, which was a substantial amount of clothing, I didn't go anywhere without a backpack full of survival gear, basically. And I mean, like, if I had to leave the building and go do my rounds, I had a backpack, I had food with me, I had water with me, I had extra batteries with me, I had more cold weather stuff that I could pull out and wrap around me if I got hurt in between buildings and couldn't shelter. So it was a challenging environment to do my rounds. I would jump from one building to the next closest building, and I would do the rounds. I would go from a building. There was a lot of outbuildings that I would have to go and inspect and make sure everything was up and running. And we had, I guess you would say, like safe houses set up in between some areas that are a longer walk. So that theoretically, if I got screwed up, the weather changed, lost my bearings, it could be, you could lose your bearings very easily in the weather.
Because it's very vast and with the storm, right?
It's dark. It could be as dark as close your eyes. I mean, seriously, and now get back. It could be extremely dark.
Yeah.
And you can't see more than 2 steps in front of you on the ground off of what the starlight is. So it could be very challenging to get from building to building. And there were certain areas where I wasn't even allowed to use the radio. They called it a dark sector, and it meant radio darkness. So every time you left the building, every time I left the building, I had all my safety gear on, and I would start tracking in the direction of the building that I wanted to go to. But I would somewhat be paying attention to how much time I had spent walking, how close I think I am to the next building, how far from the last building. And I would constantly be reassessing that in my head, because at any point in time, things could change and I might need to call for rescue, which means I need to have my bearings and be able to identify them and give them to someone, which is challenging in an environment where you can't really get your bearings often.
Right. And, well, I went to Iceland, and I was there in the winter time, and they have an amazing process where, you know, I guess living here in New England, they could benefit from it, but they don't have the means to do so, is their roads usually melt. They have a system that's set up from the volcanic activity. We don't obviously have that around here, but it's an amazing thing, because you have constant cold, and yet you have these pristine roads. Yep,
geothermal radiant heat. It's amazing stuff.
It's amazing. And so, but we were at a Airbnb, and they said, if you are going out, always check the weather before you leave. And we would, we get in the car, we'd check the weather. At any moment, if anything starts to change, you're gone. You leave. You don't try to challenge the weather. You don't try to do anything like that. And a lot of people have died that way because the elements.
Yes.
Most people are not fully prepared, and you really need to have something if you're going out and traveling around, because there's not a lot of buildings or places where you can go or hide.
Yep.
Or get away from this.
In those temperatures, and things like that. My biggest fear was that there were times where I would be walking where I couldn't see the ground. The way that the snow moves, sometimes the way that the storms would work, right? Because it doesn't really snow down in Antarctica. It just blows the wind, because it's a 0% humidity environment. It's the highest, coldest, driest place on Earth, South Pole Station. 0% humidity, and the snow just blows in from places. It doesn't drop. So with that being said, you can get wind conditions where the entire surface of everywhere you look, that there's maybe, say, 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground blowing across the surface. That's hiding every pothole or uneven thing out there. So as you're walking, you don't even know what you're actually going to step on. And you you constantly like twisting your ankle or bending your knee wrong and literally just falling down because you don't know what you're going to put your foot into.
Right.
So I'd
Right.
be falling down oftentimes, and it really hurt. And my biggest fear was like, I'm just gonna like snap my ankle or my knee, and what I'm gonna do, crawl back to the station. Where am I at now? And that's what I'd be prepped for with having extra gear, because now the ice itself at South Pole is basically minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit year round. So that's another consideration with thermal dynamics, is that it's one thing to be standing up in the atmosphere, and that's minus 80 degrees. That's air. It doesn't chill you as fast as the ice. So if you go down on the ground on the ice at minus 60, it pretty much starts killing you. You can't really sit there forever. And so you have to insulate and get yourself up and out of there rapidly. So rapid response.
Plus you're carrying that extra weight while you're walking in the snow, and then you're probably sinking. So it's like you're a heavier person.
In a way.
Be stronger, right? To be able to sustain your
I was a savage
balance.
at South Pole, actually, because there's like no oxygen. So you have to, your body has to compensate. We were tested, and I know it sounds crazy, but we were at 80% standard oxygen levels. They told us that those numbers in like the regular world, like you could just go to like any hospital, and if you show that you're at like 80% oxygen, like they'll write you a thing and you could be like on oxygen for the rest of your life. But to try to function like that is challenging. But when you do acclimate, your body your red blood cells and all that stuff increase and everything like that to compensate for the lack of oxygen. So your body grows more to carry more. So upon leaving Antarctica, when I got to Christchurch, New Zealand, I was so hyper oxygenated, the strength and everything that I had, I swear to you, I felt like I wanted to flip cars over just because I'm like, I think I can. Yeah, I was with a buddy of mine that I had been there with for the whole year, and we got back to Christchurch. His name was Ron, and I just remember walking through the streets, and the air seemed so abundant to me. Like every breath, it was just like man, I'm like, I feel so good. Like it felt like I wanted to run a marathon, flip cars, and I just felt like I could do anything.
I went to Italy years ago, and I was in a higher elevation because they have those little villages that are up in these mountains, and you have to drive around the mountain and get to the top. And I could not breathe. I was really having a hard time. And there was this 70-year-old woman walking past me going up the hill. And to talk about the walk of shame.
Yes.
I mean, I was in my 30s, and I'm like, what's going on?
I'm gonna help you out, because I've totally done this walk of shame. When I landed at South Pole Station, it was minus 50 degrees, and my first time ever at 10,000 something feet of elevation in that temperature. That door opened, it hits you like a brick in the face. You're just like, and boom, first time dealing with oxygen deprivation like that. And they're telling you, like, grab your bags and stuff like that, get them out of the plane. And we get outside, and I'm trying to get my bags up, and I'm having great difficulty. I got all of this cold weather gear on that they issued me, so I'm like the marshmallow man trying to get stuff done. And I look up from the station. DA, Destination Alpha, is the main entry exit by the skiway. And there were folks that were winter overs from the previous year that are now coming to like welcome us and help us get in. They have on like jeans, long sleeve t-shirts, and like a hat and sunglasses. And this skinny girl comes over, picks up all of my bags, throws them up on her shoulders. She's got like almost like no cold weather clothing on. She's just covering her skin. And she carries my bags and like starts walking towards the station. I can't even keep up with her walking with nothing, and she's carrying my stuff. And in my head, I swear to you, I was thinking, I'm like, man, I wonder if she can carry me too. Like, I'm dying. I'm like, how is she doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, it is absolutely amazing. If you acclimate towards something, that you get used to the environment, your body adjusts, and that's, some other indications whether someone has been somewhere or not. They know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah.
So who created that facility where the neutrinos are?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. The scientist behind that, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I'm sure it was run across. It's probably like written on the door on a plaque right next to it when you walk in, something like that, or somewhere
About the
inside.
time period, like when,
saying when it was built?
Yeah, when was it built?
In 2010 season that I was there, I believe it was in November, we completed its construction, and it went from construction to operations and maintenance. I guess that's interesting. Wow, now that we put it in perspective, that was the same thing for the elevated station. The elevated station and the ice cube neutrino detector were completed officially in my summer season, and I was on the team that transitioned it from construction to operations and maintenance.
What is your primary skill? Is it plumbing or just maintenance all around?
My primary skill set is plumbing as an expertise, plumbing and heating. But I have an extremely well-rounded toolkit, so to say. I can function outside of my trade. If you stick me at a facility, I can pretty much get almost everything back up and running. My skills are repair skills. I'm less of construction because I fix things. I can build things as well, but a builder by expertise will build faster than I will.
And you're the guy that, keeps everything running, which
Correct.
is, like you said,
it
doesn't matter how much
money you have,
and I
keep them up and running.
Yeah, how much money you have, how powerful you are, whether it's military, whatever, they still need someone that's hands-on and knows how to operate and keep things running, especially in an environment that hostile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to, is that you can't let the environment dictate the job, and you have to learn how to push through. And I guess I've learned that that's a skill set that I have in spades. The environments that I've pulled off tasks in. I mean, I get a lot of people don't believe me, but it is what it is. I've soldered 4-inch L copper piping in a minus 80-degree ice tunnel, and it's fun and challenging.
Yeah, I bet, because it gets cold before you're probably freezes up, right? And
the first time that I went down there with some tools to start assessing the situation, I went there with the biggest turbo torch tip that I had, a nice acetylene unit. Hot, it makes fire. I took this thing and I put it on the copper pipe. I mean, literally like blowtorch on a copper pipe. I had that thing there probably for 5 minutes, and I swear to you, I could take the torch away, put my hand on the pipe, it's still cold.
So Rolf has a background in welding.
There you go. It would dissipate the heat so fast running down the length of the pipe. I couldn't get it to get temperature at first. It was so wild.
Wow. I would think that's a real challenge right there.
Mm-hmm. And I do know that repair is still holding to date.
Well, that's why you got the job.
I love soldering. I really take great pride in being able to do great work in any conditions. I'll get it figured out.
All right. So I mean, it's not an accident that you've been asked to or hired for these type of jobs.
I agree. I think that there's some sort of background faction guiding thing.
There is a background. Can we're going to jump topics a bit.
No problem.
And we're going to talk about you grew up on Long Island in Montauk, right?
Close to, not in
Montauk. Close to Montauk, yeah. The area, it's a town. It's a town.
Montauk is a town, correct.
But it's not just a facility. Everyone thinks it's just a facility. It's actually a town.
Yes, it's a great fishing village. It's one of the premier fishing spots in the world.
And it started off that you grew up in a very unique area. That was what the house was in a location that was previously related to an Air Force or
the Long Island. It was the Long Island Aviation Country Club way back in the day. And this was a wealthy person's country club for airplanes. Just think of like these wealthy people, they go to the country club for golf, and now they had one for where they hang out with their planes, because it's the early 1900s and they're wealthy, and that's what they do.
And it's right on the coast.
Mhm.
It's like a peninsula.
More or
Long
less,
Island.
it was a rich people's
Yeah.
playground at the time that was there. All of the mansions were up on the North Shore, which they called the Gold Coast. And then there was only a few roads at the town that went south, and those passed through a whole bunch of potato fields and farmland, which was where all their workers lived. So all the rich people lived up on the Gold Coast on the North Shore. They would then travel down beyond the farms, and on the other side of the farms, they had the Vanderbilt Motor Parkway, which is a racetrack. And right alongside the racetrack, they built the Long Island Aviation Country Club. And the rich people didn't want the planes and the noise up by their houses, so they would just take a leisurely drive down to the country club, fly their planes all over the place. Charles Lindbergh was a member at the club, as well as many other prominent, affluent, wealthy aeronautical folks. And it's my belief that an area like this in that time period would have put these folks on the radar of anything else in the air at the time. We just learned how to fly. There was always stuff in the air. Folks like you and I know that.
Right.
But now I believe that now, because of this geographical location, that UFOs, whatever you want to call them, up there would then be paying attention to this area, and that there would be interactions. I mean, pilots
in government programs that
absolutely.
moved into the area.
Yes, and there were government programs that did move into the area. In addition to my house being on that property, actually, in time, it actually got, the property sold, and then all these developments went up. But my house was on the LIACC property proper, as is still today an extremely peculiar little school that I would say is up to no good. There's a school called Laurel Lane over there that was on the same property, and it was this little odd school that they were doing stuff which I would say was, back in the day we'd call it special needs things. But I think history has shown us that those are programs that are ripe for plucking children out of and doing not so nice things, because those programs do exist. So I think that was I think that was a building that they were doing.
I had a few of them around me. There's actually kind of a sanitarium that's well known around the world in the town that I grew up. Okay. And people, celebrities and everyone would go there. And yeah, I always wondered what was going on over there. It was very strange.
Yeah, I think it's always worth questioning when we consider the potential of the safety of children being compromised. I'd say it's a fair conversation at the very least. I'm all for kicking indoors and getting to the bad folks on the planet. And if it starts out with just a hard conversation, then so be it.
Right. But we've done that plenty of times on this channel. Plenty of times.
Right. I think my idea with that area is that I think that just because the property sold and the rich people stopped having their planes there, it doesn't mean that report went upward and onward to anybody else that was previously visiting. I wholeheartedly believe that could be part of my interactions through, my experiences that I'm trying to decipher, is that I think there's a high probability that whoever was making contact just kept coming back to that area. They might be like, hey, the humans that we contacted last time aren't here, but hey, you'll work and you'll work and you'll work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you said that early on that you were put in a program in childhood.
Yes.
Related to remote viewing and some other areas.
Yes, when I was in pretty much grammar school, most of my grammar school, as far back as I can remember, I would get pulled out of class, brought down to the library, and we were going through what I now know to be a Monroe Institute regiment of remote viewing practices. And that was they would give us eye drops. They used what I've learned. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly. I think it's called a tachistoscope, and it's a visual device, but theirs was different. And Tony Rodriguez has talked about this one as well. He and I have chatted on this one, because I remember, and you and I discussed feelings and how memories come back. I remember this device more about its function. Like, I do remember they were playing movies on it. I remember what Tony's saying, and they would show war movies and all that stuff. And I do remember that, but I wasn't really paying that much attention to it. I thought it was cool to not be in class and instead being shown like World War II movies and stuff like that. And people, I was like, I'm a kid. I'm into like G.I. Joe.
Sure.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I was paying attention to was the machine, because they would show us stuff and then ask us questions. And I remember the screen was divided. It had a line. The lines didn't even go all the way. So it was like a giant plus sign just extending to change like 4 quadrants on the screen. And it was yellow. And then the answers were also in yellow. And the you just had to look at the answer. So they would show you stuff, and then the screen would flash to the 4-way like that, and you would look at one of them, and that was the answer. And then it would go to the next thing. So all you had to do was look to give your response, and then it's going to go to the next thing. So it was like once the attendant put you in and you put your face in the goggle, the visor
Sure.
thing, you leaned into it. It's like a tabletop thing that you would look into a viewer.
I remember that. I remember something like that. Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, because I imagine there must be like some trajectory thing. And all I kept trying to do was trying to figure out the machine. I was so amazed. I'm like, how is this reading my eyes? That's all I really cared about at that moment. I just thought the machine was so cool. I'm like, this thing's so cool, you know, like, how's it doing it? And then I'd answer it again. And I'm like, oh, how's it doing it, you know? But they would do that with us, I guess, for educational and training things. Back to the remote viewing stuff, I remembered they call it an ideogram. And I hadn't heard that word since I was a little kid in the library. And recently, you know, through this deciphering of my experience, I'm looking at this remote viewing stuff, and I see people doing this, and I'm seeing the practice of it, and I'm going, oh my God, that's exactly what they were having me do. So basically they were, from what I've learned, we were doing the Monroe Institute remote viewing process by the book, but they weren't telling me that. So from my perspective, it was just very weird, because they would ask me questions and tell me to do weird things, and then ask me what my answers are, and then congratulate me on how good my job of doing that was, which from my perspective seemed insane. I thought they were all crazy people.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, that's what I always thought about when I go to the library. I'm like, whatever.
Because you had no idea what they were trying to figure out.
No,
and it just seemed random and disconnected.
Right.
Yeah.
They would say things, you know, we're going to do your squiggly line, do your ideogram, do the ideogram. Okay, do you see mountains or lakes? Huh? You know, what? It doesn't matter what answer you give, whatever, just tell us the answer. It doesn't. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, how can it not matter, the answer? How can someone ask a question and the answer doesn't matter? And it used to agitate me in a way, but also it's just like, whatever. I'm out of class. We're doing the things with this, you know. The eye drops are cool, because when I leave the library, there's an effect from the eye drops. When we were in the library, they had all the shades. Everything was totally different in the library.
First and foremost, they closed all the.
They had everything was totally darked out. There was a lot of different things in the library when we would go in. There's all different equipment in there. The librarian just sat in the dark in her, like, she had like a booth,
like cubicle of some sort, or kind of,
like you know, where she would check out the books and stuff. And it was like, normally you walk in the library, she's like the queen of the library and blah. And it was like, when this was going on, she just sat there. She didn't talk. She didn't do anything. Wow. But I would leave the dark library if I could wrap up fast and get out into the front lobby, which had big, massive windows that were south facing. All the sunlight would come in, and I wanted to get out of the library with enough time to dawdle between getting from the library back to class, because in that environment, my eyes were seeing everything with the yellow tint to them, like as if I had yellow lensed sunglasses on.
That was from the eye drops?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And then that would wear off. So again, like I said, you know, from my perspective, I don't know what they were doing at the time, but I was in Catholic school that my parents were paying for me to go to, and I pretty much presumed that this must be part of what I'm doing. Like,
that doesn't sound like traditional Catholic school.
I agree.
And I know plenty of people that have gone to Catholic school.
I agree.
And I haven't heard of anything like that in particular. Yeah. Although I do remember those lenses, but I don't remember the eye drops. I don't believe I had the eye drops. But what I think is, it sounds like in the posture of the way that the librarian was sitting during these courses, I'll say, it sounds like it was inserted and required by an outside source to come in and do this this experiment. That was not necessarily the original curriculum of what they would typically do in the classroom. And and we found that a lot of that type of stuff was going on. What year was that approximately?
This would have been, say, ballpark 1980 to 89-ish.
Okay. Yeah. So during the 60s, when they started doing all the LSD experimentations, the Montauk Project and MK Ultra, so a lot of that type of stuff started going on there, and then they started integrating it into classrooms in different degrees.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I had some kind of testing. I don't remember what it was for. And all I know is that I had like this really high percentage in like abstract thinking. They called it abstract thinking, but I felt like it was something else. It was like the top, like 90%, like the highest percent almost in the country. And I'm like, well, how is it that I'm like, you know, above average here, and then all this one area that was really spiking? But of course, you know, I knew that, you know, I was targeted for all of this myself, but in a different way, right? So we have the experiments and the different things going on.
Yep. I think these programs, this is a lot of what I'm trying to get out there is I feel like, you know, I'm remembering things is what makes me special. As far as the programs that I've gone through, I think a lot of us have gone through things like this just unbeknownst.
Very different programs, but
to some degree, we're all getting processed and prodded and probed as children, or this hierarchy that we're not really aware that even exists. Our parents aren't aware that it exists, but it messes with the kids because they have an agenda that the average parent isn't aware of. So they don't know how to be against that agenda and protect their kids. I'll give as an example my experience. When I was 18 years old, I was contracted by the United States Navy to become a fire control technician on a Los Angeles class submarine that would be potentially nuclear armed. The training started at 18 and would have been about 18 months before I would theoretically be qualified to get onto a submarine and theoretically have the potential to hit a button that kills millions of people. Here's what I'm going to suggest. My training didn't start at 18. The Navy wasn't waiting for me to become 18 years old and decide that job. I think the selection process and vetting happened much sooner.
Elementary school.
I think this happens with a lot of people in their life.
I think that's where it all is. Yeah.
I think many people don't realize that their choices in life are presented to them. So you can walk a path and you go, oh, I'm going to make a left. Oh, I'm going to fork. You know, there's a fork in the road. I'm going to go. If someone's ahead of the road on you and building the road and manufacturing the turns, you have no decisions. You've never made a free choice in your life.
That's going to bring up a lot of debate.
Fair enough. It should. Look at the world around us right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how free do you feel compared to if I asked you in 1980?
Right.
I feel 0 free compared to how free I felt in 1980 on a scale of 1 to 10. And I don't know.
And they've only done a fraction of what they wanted to do to us. There's only a fraction of what they want to do.
Yeah, if anybody understands contemporarily progressivists as a political movement or whatever you want to call it, a social program, progressivism, study the history of that, learn what eugenics is. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. They straight up do want to kill everybody.
Yeah.
It's referenceable.
Or they definitely see us as disposable. We'll say it like that. We're part of the experiment. And these are, I don't believe they're human, but that's what
more and more my brain is going that way. So I can't believe that human beings would treat each other this way. So yes, I believe this. I believe there's an outside force. Don't.
Yeah, yep. They have what's called a conscience, and we're looking at something that is completely conscienceless and treats humans as lab rats or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you go through this experience, and when did you start doing electrical work, or no, plumbing? Plumbing as
Officially,
early.
that would have been
After military, or is it prior?
1994. I officially
94.
got it.
No, we're gonna get back to 94 because 94 is a magical number. For some reason, a lot of things happened that you can identify. But let's go back to so around 1994. So you were 89. You were in school. How old are you?
I just turned 46.
How old were you there?
Oh, say in which year? In 94?
1994, yeah.
18.
18. Okay, so and that's when you started doing plumbing, and then you got into the military at the same time.
I just got out of the Navy and just got into plumbing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that was my transition right there.
What you told me yesterday is that you started doing plumbing for people that had excess wealth. Like some of your clients were very elite, similar to like in the military. They know who you are. They will not just allow you into their home, or anyone. They don't just call up, oh, let's find a listing of all the electricians in town. They don't do that.
Yes.
What is their usual process, would you say, of extremely wealthy people? How do they approach something like that, and who they welcome into their home to do any type of labor?
I'm having to reassess that myself, because I'm only just realizing that it was more coordinated than my original first perspective showed. It appeared at the time that the company that I worked for was just well known and well established, so that would be why they were calling the company, and I just happened to be working there. It was how it looked. But like you said, you're right. It's a true wealth baron on this planet is someone you don't know their name. I've said this to people before. So Bill Gates, Elon Musk, all these people that everybody thinks are wealthy are peons compared to the clientele that I used to work for. And I do not believe that it was as simple as a random plumber coming to their house, even in the company. I mean, there was tons of guys in that shop that were not going in the homes that I was sent to. So it wasn't even just the shop. In reality, there's a whole bunch of guys that are never going to step foot in the homes that I went into.
And a person could argue and say, well, they have surveillance. What would they be afraid of?
They had tons of surveillance. I know they had
right.
security teams.
But they
surveillance and security teams when I went.
But you were selected.
I would show up sometimes. I can remember one property in particular. There was a guy that used to own the New York Islanders, and his property was across the street from Sagamore Hill, which was Teddy Roosevelt's summer home back in the day, which I also did plumbing in there. But this house across the street, I pulled up to the gate. There was a camera at the gate. Real Wealth has a security guard on that camera and knows that you're coming. You don't have to hit a button and announce yourself. They are aware.
Right.
So I pulled up, the gate opens. I proceed to start driving down the driveway. It's a road going into the forest.
Sure.
I don't see a house or anything. There's just a gate and a forest. And my ticket says to go to the address, and there's a leak in the basement. I start driving down this road like forever, and I get to a stop sign, and it's a four-way intersection. I can go straight, make a left or a right, and I still don't see anything. There's no GPSs or anything then. So I call up my dispatcher on the CB radio, and I'm asking him for directions on the property. I'm like, I'm at this guy's house and I'm lost. I'm like, where's his house? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, you got to the address. He's like, find the house. I don't know what to tell you. I'm driving around in the woods, all different roads, trying to find the customer's house on his own property. It's that big. I found another home being built, and I had to ask them where the main house was, because it was. I'm like, I guess this isn't the house with the leak in the basement. And the guy's like laughing. He's like, no. I'm like, do you know where the main house is? He's like, nope. He's like, we drive in from the gate. He goes, I know how to get here. So I wound up going through the woods some more, and then came across an actual bridge, and this that I had to drive over, and there's a rushing water going under the bridge and a massive giant waterfall with like thousands and thousands of gallons rushing over it. Turns out he hired like the Disneyland construction crew to come in and build it. It's all artificial. There's a pump house on the
Wow.
bottom. It's just pumping the water up over the waterfall, you know. But like these are the types of people where it's like it's just wealth beyond wealth beyond wealth. It's undescribable wealth. And he had security. Like I did notice when I was driving through the woods, there were cameras on the trees, and they're moving and looking and panning and stuff like that. You know, full security details.
These are
And
the people that are off the books.
absolutely.
They're
Well,
people
actually,
don't know their names.
This guy, we do know his name. So
Okay.
he's up there, but it's just I brought that one up for like the level of
You've
security.
met those people, like we talked about, that you've met those people that, and I have met them too. They're very discreet. Nobody knows who they are. They
Right.
work through other people that you may find familiar, but yeah.
Actual wealthy people don't go to work. Work comes to them. They don't go to work. They have a study or a library, and whatever their business affairs are come into their home. Like their manager of this will come and visit him and say, we have trouble with this. What do you want me to do? They don't go to work. Work comes to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not working. They're just living their life of opulence and making decisions. It's not even, it's a different world that most people can't comprehend.
Yeah. And you've been in those homes.
Yeah, they're not worried about mortgages and stuff like that. In as so far as like figuring out how to pay their mortgage, they're trying to collect mortgages. They do things like own all the liens that everybody has on their houses. You know, that's what they do. A lot of the folks that I work for, straight up, had tons of Trilateral Commission and Council on Foreign Relations literature in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
Which I just knew at the time meant they were a bigwig, but I didn't really know the details at the time.
Sure, and all the ins and outs of what they were doing.
Absolutely.
And these are the people that had an awareness of you. Because
Correct.
you don't just suddenly become a plumber or electrician and
Right.
then are welcomed into those homes.
What
This is where we
is
see your path was kind of paved.
Yes, even at the very least, just from a corporate sense, right? The amount of espionage and things like that. Theoretically, they would have to be concerned that another company sent me to their home and I might have bugged their sink. That's the stuff that they're like concerned about. That's reality for them.
I was looking at, it's a little bit not really off topic, but I was watching the movie AntMan. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I haven't.
But all right, AntMan, it's really interesting because it starts off that he is like a cat burglar, and he breaks into this house. It turns out that these guys kind of hinted that he should do that. He goes in and breaks into the house. It's extremely wealthy, and it's connected to the corporation. So then they turn around and welcome him back into the house because they had cameras. They knew everything. They let him get away with it. The whole thing was set up, and then they wanted him to work for them.
Mm-hmm. I've seen stuff. I used to have to. There were times where I would have to bring someone from my company in to help me on a job site. It takes extra, just backbone type stuff. Help me carry this in the house. But I'd have to give them a speech. Like shut your mouth. Don't say anything in the house. Don't touch anything. We are absolutely being watched. There's cameras everywhere that you're not going to see. I was dealing with this in the 90s. Like people don't realize the stuff that we're getting now was available to the wealthy 50 years ago. Their houses were wired with teeny little cameras hidden in stuff everywhere. Your standard light switch or outlet box, you can replace one of those screws with a camera, and it screws right into that.
Mm.
That's been around forever. And I would go into many homes where you'd see that one of the screws was gone, and all you have to do back in the time, you'd see there'd be one screw, and then the other one was a black dot, and that was the lens of the camera, just like on the back of your phone.
Yeah.
So they had like those teeny little cameras that are in our phones right now used to be in rich people's wall outlets in the 90s, watching everything going on. Here's another news flash for you folks. Anybody who works in a corporate office and you think that the light needs to be on for somebody to be listening to, you're out of your mind. Every single commercial phone system, the boss is listening to everything everyone says always. They will lie and say they don't. But I worked with the people that do the installation. I assure you, if the company wants to pay to listen to you in your office, Unless you're paying the company not to listen to you in your office, they're going to do what the guy paying them says. Every inter-office phone system is a listening device. That is also corporate espionage.
Yep.
And those are hackable as well.
Mm-hmm.
And people love getting into comms rooms and then hacking the whole system, because then they can listen to everything in a whole other company. They get to listen to what the boss is listening to. Or they just simply want to hack the boss's phone, which would mean access is limited.
Right. It becomes a very tricky world when you start playing with the big boys,
Yes,
the big girls. I'll say the big girls
has always
too.
been extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah. And well, this is how corporations became so powerful. And I know Peter often talks about how the corporations pretty much rule everything. There's no nations in the future.
Oh, that's the truth.
I
I
can
feel
see that.
we're pretty much at the precipice right now. We're in the death throes of the United States of America if something doesn't change fast. The corporations, I mean, China owns Biden right now. I mean, that's pretty much lock, stock, and barrel.
And the whole voting issue, I mean, or non-voting or facade of voting.
Yep.
I mean, that there was a complete indication that a complete takeover where they're just making a decision. They're telling us openly, this is who we want in office. We're deciding. You're not deciding. You can play vote or whatever, but, and I know people are going to get angry about that, but it is what it is. You wake up.
I think everybody should be angry right now. If you're not angry about something right now, you're not paying attention. You can't be looking around the world right now and be contented.
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is. There's the old adage, all it takes for bad people to succeed is for good people to do nothing. And I feel that we have massive campaigns going on right now to try to keep people on their butts and unmotivated to do anything, as if we can't fix all of our problems ourselves, as if we need some savior or white hat team or some group of goodies that are supposed to be saving the world for us. I mean, that in and of itself is a program. It's a savior program that's as old as BS religions that are out there. You don't have to do the right thing. Someone else will do the right thing for you. Are you kidding me? Get off your butts and fix every problem that you see within arm's reach and keep moving forwards. That's what everybody should be doing every day to begin with. Whatever community you're in, what are you doing in your local community to make improvements? The answer is nothing. You're not a good community member. And if you can't find anything wrong in the community, then you got blinders on.
Or even just share information.
Something.
Share information with the people. I mean, there's some people that, they can't go out. They don't want to get into fights and arguments with people. But make sure that the information is out. Share it and let people know about certain things.
I wouldn't criticize anybody's choice on how they help the community. I would only criticize them for doing nothing.
Right.
But
or just
any action's good.
Or expecting, like you said, a savior to come in. I think we need to grow past that, because I think it was part of our paradigm for so long that we thought, what else are we going to do? That's the way we've been taught. Well, we have to start thinking outside the box here. And I'm not saying people are supposed to put aside any type of belief system or whatever. There's always a higher power that you can hold on to, whatever.
I get that, but I'm not saying that
but
at
this,
all.
This whole rescue
manipulation of the idea of religion as to become a control mechanism has occurred.
Right.
That's all I'm getting at. I
know where you're. Clarity is good. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I
great.
believe in a higher being 100%. I also believe that mankind has bastardized that idea for the purposes of controlling people.
Right.
I wish people could know the truth. I wish that we could have a true understanding of the creator. But what I won't yield to is the contemporary definitions that I've seen people apply to it. I would say it's more complex than that. Any definition of anything about religion, God, whatever you want to call it, had anybody's ever presented to me, I'll hear you, but then I'm going to respond with, I actually think it's way more complex than that. I don't think human beings have yet been able to find the right words to define our creator and its creation. I think they're a bit bold.
Right.
It's that simple, because it's more complex. We have not seen enough. We haven't seen enough of the creation to begin to discuss the creator. It would be like if I chipped off a piece of the cathedral at Notre Dame. And I showed you that teeny little piece of the cathedral. And then I asked you to talk to me about the architect. Can't. It's not possible.
Can't.
You haven't
It's
seen
not
enough
enough data. It's not enough information.
completely impossible.
Right.
So I respect that we have an architect to the creation around us, but I laugh at the definitions that I've been given.
But also this sedentary waiting and hoping and praying, and which is okay to pray and it's okay to have hope, but not to base your entire existence in that paradigm. I mean, we have to be proactive and we have to speak out. We don't like something. And like you said, they're counting on the fact that people are just saying you're an authority, and we have learned, it's been ingrained into our thinking since childhood that you're authority, and we have to believe everything that you say, to those that are in government positions and other type of, like, the upper echelon of who they say are important, whether it's the UN or anything like that. EU.
It's a paradigm shift, because we've actually been propagandized for you to communicate just the way you did, with no disrespect, Jessica, but you called them authorities, and they're not. But that's
what they're calling themselves.
That's what they're calling themselves.
I don't call them authorities. Right. No.
They have the people convinced of that, when we should use terms like public servants. We need to start reprogramming the population.
The terminology should be changed. Yes.
That's long-term manipulation of a society. It's been accomplished through the application of intention.
In
the early 1800s, people understood that politicians were public servants. And they understood that if a politician starts, speaking ridiculously, you could just tell them, shut up. I mean, a politician was a lowly job. It was understood to be lowly.
Right.
And it didn't pay well. Who the heck would want to be a politician back in the day? Now it pays well and is prestigious. How'd that happen?
We gave it to them.
Yep.
The average population gave that to them.
Over time, they whittled away. I think Ben Franklin said at the inception of our great country, he said that no public office should provide for a man, meaning that he shouldn't be able to singularly provide for his family off the income of that office. And he said so because he said then that man would be instantaneously corrupted, because he would require that office to provide for his family, at which point he'll do anything to provide for his family. So he thought it should be a part-time job. You had to be able to provide for yourself outside of the office. No public office should provide for a man by design.
Ben Franklin was a wise man.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, nowadays everybody like to say he's a knucklehead and an old white racist guy that didn't know anything about anything, which is the sadness of where our country is at nowadays.
Yeah.
We have people thumbing their noses at the founding fathers is off the wall.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. But we know that they want to just completely annihilate the foundation of anything that was for the people.
Yeah, it's a rewrite of history.
Yeah, and if they can wipe it out and call it fictitious, or rewrite it and say something happened that didn't. Yeah, that's called the mud flood, I think.
I wonder. Yeah, it makes me wonder.
It's just crazy. Yeah, I guess there's so many different directions we can go with this here.
I'll go for it.
But I do believe that the amount of money that people are getting paid to then make decisions that are really harmful to the population, they should be held responsible for that. They should be very much held responsible.
We hear every single administration, we hear about how they're going to provide so much more transparency than the last administration. Well, folks, how's that been working out for us? Are we going to still keep believing that? We're going to still keep sitting down waiting for the next administration to tell us the truth? It's not going to happen.
Like waiting for them to tell us disclosure.
Exactly. They had their chance. They've always had their chance. There's nothing ever stopping the government from being forthwith with intel. But they're not going to do it. They haven't done it. and you're going to get more disinformation and more misinformation.
Yeah, but we keep waiting. Why are we continuing to wait?
I haven't the foggiest idea, because what I'm trying to do is motivate folks similar to myself that have actually been in the trenches of this BS. I'm able to connect things and pull documents out, put them to market for everybody else to see. And I want other people to start doing it too, because I was not alone at any of the facilities that I was at. I'm aware that not everybody is on the same level of perception of things, but I'm trying to find the folks that are. Other people that have been out there working these programs, SSP type things, whatever you want to call it. There's people that have experiences from, excuse me, the other side, so to say, but this other side is still supported by a here and now aspect. There's got to be a transition point where there's people that are working in the here and now, and they're bringing people from here and transiting them to the SSP stuff. However this is going on, there's points where it's happening, and there's people that are in the know and can help bring out info. And since the government isn't actually releasing the truth, the only thing they're really doing right now is they're kind of just holding the door open. That's all the government is doing. They no longer have the door closed and locked on the conversation, and they're no longer penalizing everybody for talking. They're holding the door open. So I'm just telling everyone, come running through that door. The door's open. Let's go.
Right.
Tell everybody everything you know. Let's do it.
I think they're at a point where they're not really caring, and they're allowing, there's less of a filter of their agendas and what they're doing. And so because of that, they're like, we don't really care. We'll just discredit that person. We'll just make them look silly if we don't like what they're saying. We'll send a bunch of trolls to them. That was one of my fun experiences. And you know, that kind of thing, that when you're trying to bring, you know, come forward and bring out information, it's okay, until you say one little thing that they don't like, and then that's it. And it's like everyone thought social medias were a public platform. It's supposed to be a public platform, but it clearly has an extreme bias. And yesterday I did a show and I was talking about Wikipedia. Wikipedia initially was supposed to be a public platform without bias, but it clearly has a bias, and they've admitted that they have a bias. And so the information of what actually happened is leaning toward, is distorted. So then in future history, people look back and say, oh, that one is, you know, then if that person was really bad or whatever, and they, not necessarily, they just didn't even explain directly what exactly happened, or they rewrite it, or they pull the information.
Yep.
And we have this going on all around us. So it was almost like they pulled everyone in, got everyone's personal information, and it was great. People were communicating around the world, people connecting. This is the most incredible thing possible. Social media is going to change the world. And then all of a sudden something happens, people start talking about it, and they're on Facebook jail, or whatever you want to call it.
Yep. Yes, it's censorship. It's the power of the edit is really what it boils down to. Is they're allowing everybody to put information into the aggregate of the website, so to say, like Facebook, right? So everybody gets to put info in. But then they have an algorithm that now filters out. So they're controlling the perspective of everybody that comes to that site for all practical purposes. It's probably just the best way to look at it is, yeah, everybody puts info in, and then Facebook decides what gets to go output. And that's a paradigm controlling mechanism right there.
It's like Pavlov's dog too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yes, it's a training mechanism now, and then it can get to the point of being like a programmed bell ringing and getting everybody to do what you want to do. That's exactly what they are doing, because then they could just simply pump out an idea for a day and get a reaction. I mean, that's the whole program. How much money does it actually? I mean,
marketing, data.
You and I both know that there's technically a way that every single person in the country could be saying Jessica Marrocco by tomorrow's noon meal. It's a matter of how much money is invested. But that can be accomplished.
Yeah.
There are systems to do that.
Sure. They could create some kind of story, and boom, there it is.
If you had the right check, if you had a check for the right amount, you could cut that check to someone, and someone could make that happen. They say, oh yeah, by tomorrow afternoon, everybody in the whole country is going to know exactly who you are, because you had the right amount of money, and we have that system. We'll distribute it to Reuters and AP, and it'll go there, and then every other person will hit the story, and we got you covered. It's totally doable. Do you have enough money? You want to go global? You want the whole world to know your name? We can do that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way these systems work.
Right.
And then they also, as people are learning, work the other way. If they don't want anybody to know who somebody is, you know? Look at the circles that you and I run around in, right?
Right.
Everybody's talking about Antarctica. Antarctica, UFOs, and aliens. There's a couple of folks that have set foot on the ice that run around in these circles. But yet I've been doing this for about a year and a half.
And people are questioning whether or not you tell the truth.
Right? They don't really reach out to me to find out what's going on in Antarctica. All the big researchers and stuff like that, you know? Instead, I get questioned on whether the veracity of my statements. So I find it intriguing, the amount of big name researchers that I guess are so good at researching, they don't see me in the same conversations that they're in. I find that wildly intriguing.
Sure.
Speaks volumes to me.
And they've never been there.
They've never been there.
But they're the poster child
and
for.
They love talking about Antarctica with every other person in the world that has zero pictures and video being there.
Yeah, everyone but you.
It's the oddest. I find it very odd.
It's almost like you're invisible, right? You know, and yeah. I know, and I sit there and I watch, and there's all these people that are experts in different things regarding, you know, some of the work that I've done with the ACIO, and I listen to them talk. It's the same thing. It's like, that information isn't even accurate. I mean, where did they even get that? And everyone's flocking to it, and you're like, it's like, so is this magic or what is this? I mean, we know the puppeteers are able to create a following. It's able to kind of lure people in and make them seem very exciting, even though they're just as part of a program. And so people think, and I was saying this to someone recently, I was like, the people that are watching mainstream media are hooked into the program, but what people don't think about is the people in disclosure also have a set of speakers that are part of the program. And so this is directing them in the same way, so they're still hooked in. They shouldn't be hooked into anybody. Not me, not you, not anybody in the world. They should be hooked in to themselves and to be able to discern when something is not right.
I agree. Yes. That's the way I look at it. I mean, if I wanted to talk about trains and I wanted to get to the truth about trains, and there's a whole bunch of people that were talking about stories about trains and things they've heard about trains and their research about trains, that's all great. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong at all.
Right.
Technically.
Right.
But if somebody comes into the conversation, it's like, oh, by the way, I spent a year on a train. Does nobody have questions for the guy on the train? Why
no,
are they all
because
still
you're not a part of
listening to the
group.
Researchers? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of cliques and factions and things like that.
And it's not just I don't think it's a normal clique. I literally think it is part of the specific program. And there's certain people they want out because then they're going to say, hey, wait a minute. I didn't see that there. I was there and I didn't say, when did you say that happened? And they don't want those type of people there.
I'm familiar with COINTEL Pro, and I don't know if a lot of people are. Look up COINTEL Pro.
Define it for us, for the people that are listening.
COINTEL Pro is a government organization that's been around for a long time, but by a new name now, because back during the Church Senate Committee hearings, they were outed and told they were no longer allowed to operate under the name of COINTEL Pro. No one said stop. They said change your name. But right. The function of COINTEL Pro was to infiltrate both sides of every conversation.
Yes.
And they were great at it. What we found out was they were excellent at it. So they would do things like, say, during the Vietnam War, right? There's pro-war and there's anti-war. They would send bowls, provocateurs, and dissipators into every side of every conversation. So let's say, Jessica, let's say you had an anti-war group going on, right? And I
Sure.
was a COINTELPRO operative. I would just come up as a fellow college student. I go, oh, hey, Jessica, I hate that damn Nixon in the war too, and I want to help you with your movement. I just simply become your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, like, you're trying to do something, make things happen. And, obviously finances are always tight for any movement. So all of a sudden I go, Jessica, my uncle really believes in what we're doing. And, but he's a big time, buckety muck. So he can't really be involved, but he's going to throw us some money to take care of what we need to do. Bam, you just got funded by Uncle Sam and he runs your movement. And now you either agree with me and my uncle or you lose your funding.
And fall apart.
Correct. Mm-hmm. I've just taken over your movement.
Yeah. You did the ground. I did the groundwork, and then you took over. Yeah. That's how it works.
They do it all the time. Then they grow, and then depending on what cell they're manufacturing, they will fund it accordingly, and then they start making these little groups of things that they put to task. We see every time one of these buildings blows up and they capture someone, if you pay attention to the news really fast, they'll say, oh, well, it's not like he totally got away with it because we were watching him. He was on our radar. This was actually a sting operation. We arrested him because, he was going to blow up the building. Well, he wasn't really going to blow up the building because it wasn't a real bomb. It wasn't we told him it was a bomb and he thought he was going to blow up a building. So we arrested him for that. So wait a minute. So this guy wasn't doing anything wrong. You convinced him it was a bomb. You convinced him to go to the building. You set the dude up. You framed the guy.
Yeah.
That's all that's going on because whatever that cell was that they had manufactured, they needed to close down. They had been funding that guy and his ideologies up until a point that they needed to shut it down. And then when they do things like that, they put it all over the news because then everybody goes, terrorist.
Or else they get thrown out the window and then they committed suicide.
If you pay attention to when these events occur, it usually happens right before the department needs to get more funding. They need to justify their actions and presence. It's a sham. It's all a big sham.
And I noticed that a lot of these.
The world is a stage.
Yeah. I noticed that the grassroots groups, they watch them. They watch to see if they can make anything out of it. Mm-hmm. And if they have an interest or see that they're getting somewhere, then they step in and then take it over.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just like inventors. Inventors start creating something and they see someone that has getting a little too close to creating a new type of product and ingenuity. And then they step in, they show up out of nowhere. How did they know? How did they know? You're not even advertising yet. How do they know?
This is the different world. You and I wake up to, and we're concerned about paying our bills this week, next month, and so on and so forth. When you don't have those concerns, your mind goes in other places and you're functioning in different paradigms. And that's what those people do is now they get to cherry pick from the crop of people, the things that they need because they have the time to do that. And then the way that you now guide that person in the direction that you want them to go is you simply give them a little bit more money that they've ever had access to.
Right.
And then you now take that money train and move it in the direction that you want. Because their choice is to get off the money train at any time they want. And people can't do that. They're very challenged to do that.
Anytime someone tries to step out, this happens. Anytime. I mean, Tesla went through it. He was just trying to bring in new energy, free energy.
Yep.
And then they take his ideas and turn it into something else.
Absolutely.
The weaponize what they're doing. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, and it's a cycle. But I like to not be completely a downer about everything. But it's almost like, I think by waking up, it does open up other doors. And people should become more savvy. There's no sense in going down the same road that has a blockade over and over and over again.
Right.
Sometimes you have to take another route.
Fair enough. Absolutely. I think in this circumstance, I feel like the route is action. I feel like what we've been doing over and over again is nothing while bad people advance. So I mean, I don't want to be a downer either. But there's a time and a place for things, right? And it would be like, you can't sit there and watch your friend get punched in the face. You can't say that I'm being a downer by warning you that you're about to get punched in the face.
Right.
You know, so it's like, I don't want to break up the party, but I think that dude's about to punch you in the face. So I have to be that downer. And that's where I feel like we are in the world right now, is that we're in a war right now, and people don't know that. They've just been tricked into being out of the fight. We are in world war.
The war is so slick.
Yes.
That they could just walk in right now. Right now, they without weapons.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The weapons aren't what people think anymore.
But they don't even need weapons. That they've already convinced people.
Yes, it's a psychological operation first and foremost. It's highly effective. This is like Sun Tzu level stuff. Straight up, like if you can convince your enemy not to fight, you've already won the war.
Yes.
We've been defeated according to ancient wisdom. It's already happened. The U.S. has been defeated because we're not fighting back. That's very unpatriotic, as all of the shenanigans and lack of freedom. It's
not just yelling and screaming and saying, no, I'm not wearing a mask or anything like that. It's bigger. It's really understanding what
solidarity, the division weapon, the psyop of division has defeated our nation. The only thing we need to win is solidarity of action and voice. When all of this COVID junk first came out, I keep forgetting if it was Norway or Denmark or Sweden, but one of those nations did what they called the pots and pans event. Did you hear about this?
No, I didn't.
Excellent. So when everybody else started going into lockdown, their public servants decided that they were going to start the same measures. The entire nation just said no. And in solidarity, they stopped doing everything. And they stayed in their homes and proceeded to just bang pots and pans and laugh at the politicians and go, yeah, no, we're not doing that, by the way. So you can all resign, and we're not doing anything until you do what we want. Be quiet now. We're going to bang pots and pans until go away. And it worked, because that's how simple it is. It's that simple.
I want you to share with people the monkey story, the story that with the bananas.
You got it. Okay, so there's this experiment that they talk about back in the day, and I feel that this is precisely where we are right now. You take 50 monkeys, you put them in a big pen, plenty of room, you put an A-frame ladder in the middle, and hang some bananas from the top. The experiment goes like this. The split second a monkey goes for those bananas, every monkey gets hammered with a fire hose. I'm not saying this is the politest experiment in the world. I'm just saying follow the logic. So the experiment hits the monkeys with the fire hose, and the monkeys very rapidly learn to never go up the ladder to get the bananas, to the point that they will beat another monkey down that goes near that ladder. They're trained now. They then start to substitute in new monkeys who aren't familiar with the program, and the monkeys will beat down the new monkey, and they become trained. At this point, they don't even have to use the fire hose anymore, because the monkeys are just teaching the new monkey. Now they get it in a rotation so that the monkeys are all well trained, and not one single monkey in that room has ever seen the fire hose before. And they will never go near that ladder or the bananas, and they will never even know why.
Right.
And that is precisely where we are today.
It's exactly where we're at.
The monkeys that are reacting to an environment, doing what we've been trained to do, and we don't even know why.
And we're having other citizens yelling at other citizens to conform or comply.
The same system is surrounding us right now. Yes, the other monkeys will attack you if you get out of line for doing the thing that you're supposed to do that you don't know why.
Mm-hmm. Which none of it makes any sense.
Not at all. Nope, not a bit of it.
Yeah.
It's actually lies. It's straight up lies. I had an OSHA respiratory protection expert on air, and I interviewed him. That is the authority on the mask. Straight up. That's the authority.
Right.
That's who you go to in our country to find out the proper use of PPE for your lungs. He said the mask is worthless. Everybody, well, the doctors say we have to wear them. Guess what? Doctors don't decide what PPE is appropriate. in the emergency room. It's not up to them. It's up to OSHA.
Right.
OSHA spends the money. OSHA finds out what protection is required, and OSHA defines safety regulations, not the medical industry. The medical doctor doesn't choose what he wears. OSHA tells him what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this works. Nothing has changed. The mask
In
never.
in an area where this viral contamination, they would not use the type of masks that we're using.
It's all bogus. It's all lies.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't even realize that their employment, right? So I'm very trained in safety because of the environments that I work in. I'm quoting stuff that I know as an expert in the field.
Right. So that
When
they're
you show
pretty
up to
much
a job site and an employer identifies a hazard.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that all day long. You want to identify a hazard, boss? No problemo. Now we have to do the proper mitigating technique. That's it. That's how this works on safety. If there's a hole in the floor, my boss can't say, "Oh, just lay a ladder over it and walk across it." It's not OSHA approved. He doesn't have that authority. Neither does a doctor, and they can't start telling you what's the right equipment. It's already predetermined. So anybody out there, if you're at work and your boss says that they have a COVID concern and you have to wear a mask, they have to provide you a full face respirator.
According to what they're saying that this is.
Okay, if they want to identify a hazard, they have to identify the proper gear to mitigate it, and they have to supply it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a big problem from an OSHA standpoint with every employer right now identifying a hazard in the environment that they're not providing the proper PPE or training. You actually,
and this is a bigger issue. I know a lot of people, because I don't want to. We have to, you know, I don't know if we want to stay on this topic so much, but the idea of that they've any type of standardization. Any type of measurement, any type of use of professional expertise in specific areas are suddenly, not just in this one category, in all categories, are being thrown out. So the people that have spent their time, education, and knowledge learning specific skills are now being talked to as if they don't know anything.
Correct.
And so that they're removing any type of expertise and trying to get everyone to second guess whether or not they're accurate. Now, for me, I've been accused of this all my life because I'm an interdimensional seer, right? So people have always said, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or what you know, what is that? And then I would prove to them that I was right on something. They can't figure out how I did it, and they'd be like, all right, so you know, still their mind's telling them that they have to tell me that I don't have any credibility, but they do that. They're doing this with professionals and people that are not accustomed to being talked to this way. Mm. And so those people are like, what is going on? What is going on? Why am I being talked to as if I have to second guess what I'm saying? But this is science. This is math. This is basic.
Mm-hmm. I'm having trouble finding employment because I'm aware of my rights. I don't have to. I've already won cases against employers. I've been fired illegally for not wearing a mask, and I won my case because it's illegal to fire me for not wearing a mask. I brought OSHA regs in and everything. I mean, I won. I'm right. Everybody can go back to work now. But you don't have to wear a mask.
But but it's, even if you're right, you're still wrong according to them.
Correct. Yes, because they don't even understand what right is anymore.
It doesn't matter. They penalize you.
Right, and they're also, most of these people are now getting subsidized from all these COVID acts and things like that. So they're not going to lose the money train. They're gonna acquiesce to the demands. Well, if we don't make you wear a mask, then we don't get the subsidy money. Mm-hmm. You know, technically, my employer is in deep trouble because now he's illegally fired me under the pretenses of his deal with the government, and I'm totally going to rat them out. They're going to have their multi-million-dollar loan is going to. I'm sorry, their multi-million-dollar grant's going to turn into a loan. Sucks to be them. And everybody has the power to do these to these employers that are doing the wrong things. Rat them out. Right. Inform the powers that be of the nefarious things that these companies are doing.
Yeah,
and then they're going to take their grant and turn it into a loan, and they're going to have to pay it back.
So even if the upper levels of whatever authority, non-authority or servitude, as you call it, it looks like that's where the problem is coming from the
Yes.
down.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot that could be said, but I don't know if it's just going to take down the video.
No, I understand. Yeah, and I'm not looking to cause that to happen in the slightest. It's better off, I guess, getting some info out there than nothing.
Than nothing.
Excuse me. But this is too. I'll have to have you on my website at one point, because this is why I did the website, because it can't be censored.
You can't. No. But yeah, and we can say things without saying them in certain ways. We can
Fair
get
enough.
that information out.
Frustrated. It's like, I know when I speak, I'm speaking the truth. I'm like, but that doesn't matter anymore.
Well, I mean, we don't have to like spell it out for them and all that other thing. Every people know what we're talking about.
10-4.
And so they're accustomed to it. So our present situation is a mess. We didn't get here yesterday. This has been progressive. It's been going on for a very long time.
Right.
And there have been many whistleblowers for a long period of time that have been trying to inform people. And it did gain some momentum from different groups that got very, very popular. And so there are quite a few people that are starting to research and look into things, and feeling like they don't need the approval of the mainstream to help them decide what is true. And that was the fear, is to be out of the social acceptability.
Yep. I agree 100%. I think that the youth nowadays is a lot more enlightened than when I was that young. For example, I came up through the time period of, when you were talking about 9/11 truth, people thought I was a Nazi for being against the government and questioning things. How dare you say that 9/11 was an inside job? Now it's just like a given. Everyone's like, oh yeah, it's a total scam. But what do people do about it now? What heads rolled?
I know.
So like you said, like it is.
I mean, it's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. I mean, you look at the news or the alternate news, and it's happening across the planet in all different places.
I just noticed the other day I scheduled something for coming up on this next September 11th. And I noticed on the calendar, it calls it Patriots Day. And I can only presume that that's a post-September 11th thing, that it got titled Patriots Day for some reason, is my assumption. Because I don't remember there being a Patriots Day before that one, so I imagine
I don't remember that either. Yes.
And it actually got me really mad, because I thought, you know what?
Sure.
And my girlfriend actually said, she goes, they should call it the Patriot Act Day. And I'm like, right? Right? Patriot Act Day. That's the day we got the Patriot Act.
Yeah. It was one of those in your face type of situations.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a friend that lives in London, so I'm communicating with people from around the world, and there was a friend in London who there was a building that got burnt down in the middle of the night when everybody's sleeping. They didn't wait until everyone goes off to work. They definitely want to take everyone down. And it turned out it was an insurance fraud. They just wanted to rebuild the building, get everyone out, and the souls there, whatever. I need my money.
Yeah, at a certain level, life has much less value. And at the level of politics, I would say it's certainly at that low level. When you consider that the nations of the world have public servants at the helm of their military-industrial complexes, and that when they give commands that will effectively lead to the demise of women and children, I think those people's mentalities aren't limited by imaginary borders on maps. If you're that type of person to begin with, So I think when these people reach these levels of power, and they're the sociopaths that they are, they have no problem stirring the pot in their own home, so to say.
Right.
Because it's about the power and the money and not about the people.
Right. Conscienceless.
Yes, very much
Right.
so. Yeah,
Right.
I'm the other direction. I'm we the people, for the people, and that's it. I mean, that's the answer to all of our problems. If we could just stop letting them divide us so easily. We don't hate each other. We always help each other. We help strangers all the time, everywhere we go. You leave your house, somebody's got, like, this is what we do. We like each other.
Absolutely.
Don't let the news media tell you that it's different, that people are walking around with all of this hatred inside of them. It's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings love hanging out. We love having fun. We love interacting with each other. The more we do it, the more we enjoy it, and watch how much they're distancing us and trying to make it like that's not true. You know?
I think that's the best message right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's it in a nutshell. Because when it comes down to it, and whether you're talking about secret space, whether you're talking about Antarctica,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're talking about anything else on the planet, and the injustice and programs that they put children in, and when it comes down to it, it's our human experience that's being pulled from us.
Yes.
Yeah, the children that can't go out and play in the afternoon.
Yeah, that was the word in my head, was the children.
Yeah.
We have
Do you know that? Yeah.
really look at this world and consider, how would you remold it if you really had the ability to make it the best way possible for all of the children? I don't want to just hear about your kid. Everybody can figure out how to make it good for their kid. But how do we make this whole world better for all of the children for many generations? And I would like to suggest, actually, I would like to declare that our founding fathers absolutely sat down and had these conversations. You may or may not agree with what their outcome was, but you have to appreciate that at the very least, they were concerned with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see conversations happening contemporarily where we're talking about how well we're going to make the world 4 generations out. We're not laying plans right now for that. How come? Because we're being divided into believing that right now is terrible, and the end of the world is tomorrow. We can't even think about 4 generations.
But they're telling the children that. I remember my son talking about it. Part of the curriculum was to inform everyone that we're not going to have a world in the future. That everything's. I was like, what are they teaching?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Control mechanisms.
Yeah. So you know what it does to these kids?
Mm-hmm.
Why even bother?
Yeah,
why bother?
Yep. Instilled hopelessness, inculcated in society across the board. That is MK Ultra right there. This is why I'm saying that, like, they're targeting the masses now. Folks like me, when I was a kid, they put me in a program and they were trying to learn how to manipulate human nature.
Mm-hmm.
They were targeting me at the time to gain a toolkit to create a weapon that they can now take the target off of me as an individual and apply it to everyone in mass. So I'm seeing these machinations in society. I'm watching people get brainwashed every day. I'm watching people take misinformation and disinformation and the truth, and they can't tell any of it apart from each other.
No.
We were taught stuff like that in school. We were taught how to think. We were taught how to break down sentences. We were taught to understand that word selection matters. That if somebody's saying something, to have an inflection and all of these things that mattered. And we're losing it. We're totally losing our ability to communicate. We're totally losing our ability to have a conversation and simply know whether what that person said was true or not. Now we have a whole bunch of people,
conforming, just conforming to.
People. Yes, you're right. It is a conforming. They're conforming to whatever comes out of anybody's mouth because they don't feel empowered to put their foot down and go, "You're full of shit," when it needs to be done that way, because we're so politically correct now that you can't challenge anybody's statements on anything, because those people say things like, "Well, I wasn't there. I don't know. How would I know? I couldn't see." Well, guess what? Then you can't know anything about anything that you haven't ever seen, because if you weren't there, how do you know? You got to take people's word for it.
Right.
And that's a bunch of baloney. That's where discernment comes in. Like if 4 people stand in front of you and give you testimonies. And they used to do game shows on this. You know, one person's telling the truth and 3 people are lying. Figure it out. Guess what? If you can't do it in real life or a game show, you're a pretty dysfunctional person. You're gonna be caught in the whims of every statement that fires across your bow. You know, right now we have a whole population of people that are wishy-washy. They believe whatever is the last thing they heard. Because did you hear so-and-so said this? And did you hear so-and-so said that? Well, so what? What's your discernment on it? What's your angle on it? What do you believe? And now I want to hear your opinion of why you think that. And if you can't back it up, then you're just regurgitating other people's opinions. You know?
Right.
I want people to have original thoughts, real ideas. You know, how many people have original thoughts anymore? Or are they just rethinking something they saw somewhere else and they observed? You know, I always think of it like there's a thought.
They don't believe in themselves. That was stripped from them.
They don't have a self anymore. They're representations of mirrors of other things. Because heaven forbid they give you their honest, hardcore opinion that they would have to support. They don't have the backbone for that anymore because heaven forbid somebody doesn't agree with them.
And they're worried that people aren't going to agree. But there's nothing wrong with people disagreeing. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's how we learn.
It's how we learn and grow and also see other perspects, but also that other person could be wrong for not agreeing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, but you didn't have confidence enough or belief enough in yourself to be able to say that. And you have to be able to say that.
Yes. If something doesn't sound right or feel right, I mean, that's a normal thing to say someone in a conversation. When somebody says something, you go, wow, that sounds far-fetched. And that's when the person would put something into it, you know? Right. Or you would find out it was far-fetched. If you let people run with the conversation, you'll also find that if they're left unchecked, guess where the conversation usually goes?
I've actually had people say, I'd say, well, when did this happen or whatever? Oh, I don't know. I'm just like, just talking. And I'm like, what? And it's like a stream of consciousness. It's like, it's really weird what some people are doing, regarding programming and how they're interpreting information.
And I mean, I get you can't remember everything either. I make mistakes.
Yeah.
I
think some people are just going with the narrative. That's what I was talking about. Not necessarily just forgetting, but literally create, finding a narrative somewhere and running with it, and not even validating, not even knowing if it was true, and then and no one ever checks them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that happens more than it should. And again, I'm not knocking people for their testimonies, but I mean, in the world that we're in contemporarily, there's only so much you can do with that. It's just like I'm a tradesman, so I think of tools in a toolkit. I mean, there's certain tools that are good for certain things, and they're not good for other things. So testimony has value, but it only has so much value. There's a truth to that.
Well, I think what we need is more hands-on, boots on the ground type of thing.
I think there's a lot of people that have perfectly good testimony that also have access to facts to substantiate their testimony. I didn't always have possession of documentation. I also didn't have my testimony dialed in. I was deciphering my experiences, and in the process, I learned things that I was like, you know what? People also need to know that. So I would love for other people to decipher their testimonies, figure out their lives. We will believe the testimony, but let's also now, from these other individuals' perspectives and lives, let's start pulling some facts into the equation too. I know they're out there.
And it's also, like I said, start believing in yourself.
Yes.
And it sounds very like, preschoolish, but let's start believing in ourselves. We forgot along the way. We got so oppressed and programmed and everyone trying to fit us into the mold that a lot of people just forgot and let go of their own identity.
I love the way that you just put that, Jessica, because I'm going to talk to everybody how I actually know everybody to be. You're right. We are pre-kindergarten age children inside still. So kids, listen up. I know life's been hard. I know we've been crushed and we've been lied to. And I know that inside you're all right and you can help. So do the right thing. Everybody's been crushed, but we are gigantic children in adult suits. That's reality. Jessica, you're a child. I'm a child. We've simply just aged physically.
We physically aged, but emotionally, That's
We
when
are
they
the
caught
same
us.
exact.
That's
You
when
are the
they
same
trapped
person
us
you
in.
are in pre-kindergarten as I am. You can go
Right.
right back to that, and so can I. And we can
Yeah,
look at the world, and we can say, "Wow, I never thought it was going to be like that, and I actually wish it wasn't." And I can see where there would be places for improvements.
Yeah. Santa's not
Now,
there.
I can't
It's
fix it
not
for
Santa.
myself, but what
Yeah.
I can do is I can assess that there are pre-kindergartners now that would rather be in that world that I can imagine now, having gone through the shit show that we just went through, to say that we deserve to do better for the up and coming kids.
Right.
So all the other kids out there that look like me,
Forever young. There you
right?
go. Yeah.
That's what we need to get back in touch with and have more of a schoolyard mentality and realize that these people that you walk around with every day that you think of as adults, I suggest people do this because I'm in the practice of it. I don't treat adults like adults anymore. I treat adults like children. I get a much better response.
Mm-hmm.
I picture them as a kid. And I treat them as a ignorant child that's not as informed as an adult should be.
These are the ones you're saying. These are the people that think
Any
they know it
stranger.
all.
Any stranger that I meet on the street, I don't presume them to have an adult intellect. I've learned better. I've learned that if I engage them for their childlike intellect, it'll be a better engagement. People in their adult character aren't very interesting or agreeable people.
A lot of them, like I said,
They leave the
playing
home
a
with a
role.
barrier on.
That's
Yes,
their
they're playing
role,
a
and
role.
that's the facade of who they're
Yes.
playing. But you're right, when you bring it down to a childlike state, I think children are honest.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they're real.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, all right, yeah, that's a cup of milk, that's a cup of water. I mean, they're not going to start saying something else is different about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say what it is, and I think that's the way we need to be, and very simplistic.
Yeah.
And this is what's holding us back. It's the Emperor's New Clothes scenario that we keep on saying, oh, he's wonderful. Yes, I really like it. Blah, blah, blah. We want everyone to like me. So I'm going to say exactly what they want us to say. But it's a facade. It's a lie. And we keep on creating this mess. And unless we become truthful and honest.
Yeah, we shouldn't as a society be toiling in our labors so hard, so often, for so little return on investment. Basically, you can look at folks like Buckminster Fuller, who are saying we should be able to do things more efficiently. I agree. I would also state that the Industrial Revolution was a lie because we work as a household. We have more members of the household at labor now than we did prior to the Industrial Revolution. The idea of that was we were supposed to mechanize everything so that the laborer had recreational time. And you could spend time with your family. That's what that was sold as. People don't know this.
Yeah, I remember that.
We got sold down the river on that one.
On a lot of things, a lot of things.
So now the family unit, we now have the father and the mother both working to support the household. That's a complete reverse of what was supposed to occur. We're supposed to have less man hours required from the entirety of the household to accomplish the same thing. Now it takes more effort to get less.
I think it was FDR said something about having a chicken in everyone's pot, and so everyone would have enough food, and then it turned into, and I don't know, maybe his true intention was socialism, but
I think it was a sham. I think it was a lie to get us into a harder, tighter labor regimen.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't release us from laboring.
No, it didn't. It didn't. But it was kind of, getting people to be satisfied, thinking that there's some kind of promise and a reward that they'll pat you on the head. You get a reward coming if you listen. Just listen to us, obey, and do what we say. And they have many different ways of doing that.
I always say, what does it take for a man to be content? Right.
So, last words, because we're winding up. I think we're coming to close to 2 hours, and I think people are going to be overwhelmed with all of this.
Might have to split it into 2 parts.
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely.
You never know. Yeah, it's
Do
hard to
an-
keep people's attention.
Yeah. So last thoughts
On?
on
Oh,
before
geez.
we leave.
My last thoughts. I want people to go to my website, deciphering.tv, and go into the archives and find facts. I want people to look at those types of facts and look in their world and see if you can start doing things similarly. If you can start helping us help people. This is a we the people thing. The government is not going to save us. We have to do this ourselves. I have documentation. I'm sure other people have had similar documentation come across their desks. So to say, let's just share this stuff. Let's let everybody know what's really going on in the world. I've been places and I've seen things. I'm sure there's other people that have been places and they've seen things as well. Let's chat. What documents you got? Let's do this. That's where I'm at. I mean, we got to move forwards. The door is open. The government left the door open. Let's charge through that thing. Let's find out as much facts and stuff and bring it to the public as quickly as we can, because who knows how long the door will be open.
Right. Right. And people are welcome to contact me as well for that.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to hopefully create a community where people are communicating with one another and then everyone participates.
Yeah, I agree.
It's for all of us. But thank you. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
It was a really good interview. Very, very interesting conversation, and I appreciate your time and effort to be here.
Awesome.
So we'll do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for your support. Continue paying attention to some of the different shows that are coming up. Have a good day, everyone.
You have been listening to Andronetalks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Arael Morocco and visit our website at www.readingsbyariel.com.